I never thought I'd be the guy sitting in a dark room, staring at a flickering screen, wondering if my entire life was a lie. But here I am. And I honestly need to know if you think I'm the villain in this story or just a man who finally pushed back after being pushed too far. Have you ever looked at the person you love most in the world and realized you didn't actually know them at all? Or worse, that they viewed you as a safety net while they went out and lived a completely different life behind your back? My wife, Elena, was the person I trusted with every secret and every vulnerability I had. But it turns out she was keeping a secret so dark and so calculated that it has completely rewired how I see the world. And now that the dust has settled and the lives of everyone involved are in ruins, I'm left wondering if my reaction was justified or if I became the monster I was trying to punish. So please, listen to the whole story and tell me honestly if you would have done the same thing or if I went way too far. To understand how we got to that night at the party, you have to understand that Elena and I were that couple. Everyone envied because we seemed to have it all figured out, having been together for 6 years and married for 3. Living in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the biggest drama was usually someone's lawn being too long. I worked as a senior software developer, which meant long hours and a good paycheck, while Elena worked in high-end marketing, a job that required her to be social, outgoing, and constantly attending events, which I always supported because I loved how ambitious she was. We met in our late 20s and the connection was instant, a whirlwind of shared dreams and a mutual understanding that we were building a future together, and for a long time, I truly believed we were on the same page about everything from our finances to our eventual plans for a family. However, looking back now with the clarity that only betrayal can provide, I can see the tiny cracks that I chose to ignore. Like the way she started setting her phone face down on the table, or how she began mentioning a new group of friends from work that she never seemed to want me to meet. She told me they were just work people and that I'd be bored by their industry talk, so I stayed home while she went to mixers, gallery openings, and what she called networking mixers that often ran late into the night. One of these events was a massive summer bash hosted by a prominent executive in her firm, a man named Marcus who had a reputation for throwing the kind of parties that ended up on social media feeds for all the wrong reasons, and though I was invited, Elena practically begged me to stay home because she said she needed to work the room without having to worry about entertaining me. I trusted her implicitly, so I told her to have a great time, kissed her goodbye, and spent the evening playing video games and catching up on work, never imagining that while I was sitting on our couch, my wife was being treated as a prize to be shared between 2 men she had known for months. The discovery didn't happen that night. It happened 3 days later when I was looking for our shared iPad to check a flight confirmation and found that her messaging account was still logged in, displaying a group chat that she had clearly forgotten to hide. The messages were from Marcus and another guy named Julian, and as I scrolled up, the world started to spin because they weren't talking about marketing or budgets. They were talking about Elena in a way that was so dehumanizing and graphic it made my stomach turn. They were laughing about how she had played her part at the party, how they had taken turns with her in a private suite while the party raged downstairs, and how they couldn't believe I was clueless enough to let her come alone. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears as I read Elena's responses, where she wasn't protesting or acting like a victim but was instead flirting back, joking about how the husband was safe at home and how she couldn't wait for the next time they could use her like that again. It wasn't just a one-time mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a game to them, a sick power dynamic where she enjoyed the attention of these 2 powerful men, and they enjoyed the thrill of taking something that belonged to someone else. I felt a cold, calculated rage wash over me that I had never experienced before, a feeling that replaced my grief with a burning need for a specific kind of justice that wouldn't just end our marriage, but would dismantle the world they had built for themselves. I spent the next week acting like the perfect, doting husband, which was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, watching her smile at me across the dinner table, knowing what she had done and what she was still planning to do. I realized that if I just confronted her, she would lie, cry, and gaslight me, and Marcus and Julian would get away scot-free, continuing their lives as if they hadn't participated in destroying a man's soul for a Friday night thrill. So I began to gather my evidence. Not just the messages, but I hired a private investigator to follow her to the next meeting. And what he found was even worse. This wasn't just a physical affair, it was a lifestyle they had been living for months, with Elena acting as a sort of social lubricant for their business deals, using her charm and her body to seal partnerships while they rewarded her with career fast-tracking and expensive gifts I never saw. I had everything I needed: photos, videos, and a mountain of digital evidence that proves not just the infidelity, but the corporate misconduct and the predatory behavior of Marcus and Julian within their company. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice between walking away quietly or burning it all down to the ground. Before I tell you what happened next and how I executed the final blow, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have just filed for divorce and moved on? Or would you have made sure they felt every bit of the pain they caused? The climax of this nightmare came 2 weeks later at the firm's annual gala, an event where everyone who was anyone in their industry was present, including the board of directors and the major shareholders. I had spent those 2 weeks meticulously preparing a tribute video for Elena, telling her it was a surprise for her promotion, and I convinced the event coordinator to let me play it on the big screens during the keynote speeches. When the lights dimmed and the music started, Elena stood there with a glass of champagne, looking radiant and proud, while Marcus and Julian stood nearby, smirking like they owned the world. The video started with photos of our wedding, but after 30 seconds, the music distorted and the screen cut to the screenshots of their group chat, followed by the private investigator's footage of them entering hotel rooms together, and finally, the audio recordings of them bragging about how they used her while I sat at home. The silence in that ballroom was the loudest thing I've ever heard. You could literally hear the champagne glasses hitting the floor as the entire industry watched the vice president, the lead consultant, and the rising star marketing manager get exposed in the most public, humiliating way possible. Elena collapsed into a chair, shaking and sobbing, while Marcus tried to shout for the tech crew to shut it off. But I had already bypassed the system so it would play on a loop. I didn't stay for the shouting match or the security. I walked out of that building, drove straight to a lawyer's office to drop off the final divorce papers, and then went to a hotel I had booked under a different name. The aftermath was a total bloodbath. Marcus and Julian were fired within 48 hours for violating every ethics clause in their contracts, and their wives both filed for divorce the same week after the video went viral in their social circles. Elena tried to call me hundreds of times, claiming she was forced or coerced into it to keep her job, but the messages she sent laughing about me proved otherwise, and she eventually lost her career, her reputation, and her home. I didn't just take her away from them. I took away the status and the game they were all playing at my expense. Looking back, people tell me I was cruel for doing it so publicly. But I believe that if you choose to live a lie and hurt people for sport, you don't get to choose how your truth comes to light. I lost the woman I thought I loved, but I gained my self-respect back by showing them that the clueless husband was the one holding all the cards in the end. Like this video if you think I did the right thing by exposing them, and subscribe for more stories where the truth finally catches up to the people who think they're untouchable. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section, because I'm still processing if there's ever really a winner in a situation like this. And I'll see you all in the next story.